Hello, seventh graders. Today we continue on with our geometry discussions. Yesterday we learned some basics of points, lines, and planes and angles. We need to continue on with angle basics today. That's page 59. A lot of your seventh grade geometry standards have to do with angles. So I find students are often a lot better at these standards if they understand more about how to name and write angles. So let's get out page 59. Pens and pencils, if you have different colors today, that really can help to visualize with what we're doing. So here we go. One thing that can sometimes be confusing for students in dealing with geometry is the fact that we often have multiple ways to name the exact same thing. And it depends on what's there. It depends on the easiest way to write it and what you're going to do with it. So for example, this angle right here, we actually have 4 different ways that we can name this one angle. And that's what we're going to do over here, show those 4 names. One thing I can do because of this labeled inside is I can just call it angle 1. Now, when we've been typing these into Canvas, I've been having you use the shift comma, which is actually more of a less than symbol. An angle symbol is actually truly horizontal on that first ray, and then it goes up. So when you're drawing them on your paper, try to make it the true geometry symbol with horizontal and then going up. It's not actually a less than symbol, it's an angle symbol. Sometimes though, they don't put those little labels inside. So that's when we have to label with the points they give us, right? If you recall, this point A would be called the vertex because it is the point where the 2 rays have a common endpoint. The thing that is super important when naming an angle, if you missed any of those on the last Canvas quiz, you should go back and make sure, did I put the vertex in the middle? That's what really matters. So I'm still going to use the angle symbol. I could name this angle, angle BAC, or another way I could name it is angle CAB. What I cannot do is angle ABC, because if I try to start with A and follow the angle around, that does not work because B is not the vertex. A is the vertex. The vertex must always go in the middle. So I can go BAC or CAB, but I cannot go ABC or BCA. What you name it, the 3 letters, you should be able to trace it and actually draw the angle with your finger. Now, because there's only one angle in this picture, and you'll see examples of when this won't work in just a second, but you can sometimes, if there's only one angle in the picture, you can sometimes name the angle just by the vertex point. But I'm going to warn you right now that we don't often get that luxury because usually we're going to deal with pictures with more than one angle in it because we're going to learn a lot about these special relationships and there's going to be more than one. Okay, so first thing you need to know, there's 4 ways to name just that angle right there. That's not confusing at all. All right, this next part is a review of something that I know you heard in elementary. We just need to make sure we remember it. Okay, what do these words mean? Well, these are ways to, what's the word I'm looking for? Classify. Classify is to put things in groups, give them names. Here's another way we can classify angles. Okay, some more geometry language here. Again, this should be a review, but even if you're hearing it for the first time, that's okay. It's not that complicated. Acute means that the measure of the angle is, this is confusing because I'm gonna actually do a less than. It needs to be less than, that's not an angle, that's a less than this time. Do you see how that's not horizontal? Man, math symbols are confusing, especially when we mix studies of mathematics. Less than 90 degrees is acute. Exactly 90 degrees is a right angle. Greater than 90 degrees is obtuse. And equal to 180 is a straight angle. Again, those are things you probably heard in elementary. Okay, so let's draw them. You heard these in elementary? Got an elementary kid here. Acute, obtuse. Any of that sound familiar to you?
That's probably a 6th grade thing.
She thinks it's probably a 6th grade thing. I don't know. Maybe it's the first time you've ever heard it. Let's show ourselves what they are, whether you've heard it or not before. Acute angles, to say less than 90, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw one of the rays. We know that 90 degrees would be square, right? That's even in carpentry when they say this table is square. That means they made a measure of 90 degrees. That's what that's called. So to make exactly 90 degrees, I'm actually going to start with that one. to make 90 degrees, and I'm just sketching, it might not be perfect, but this should be a square right here. That's why we often draw that. 90 degrees should be exactly a square straight up like that. Now they might rotate it around, but that angle is 90 degrees, it stays a square. And I can even see after drawing it that mine's probably a little less than 90, but that's okay. I drew the square to show this is a right angle. So acute needs to be smaller than that, less than a square, and obtuse, I wouldn't go straight up, I would go farther out, right? So a right angle is 90, acute, that measure that it opens is smaller than 90, obtuse, this measure that it opens is bigger than the square, bigger than 90, and a straight angle, here's one ray going like that, and the other ray goes completely in the opposite direction. It really looks like a line, and that measure of the angle is actually 180 degrees. And that's going to come into play big time as we move forward with angles. Okay, so one of the things you have to be able to do is classify these things. So when we read this, this is how we read this out loud. Measure of angle A. Mathematicians love to put things in shorthand version. It takes longer. If I wrote out all those words, the measure, THEMEASURE of ANGLEA, that's way longer than just writing this. So mathematicians give you a shorthand way to write it. But this means measure of angle A. If the measure of angle A equals 90 degrees, we would classify that as a right angle. If the measure of angle B, and they're naming it just by their vertex, if the measure of angle B is 118, that is greater than 90 degrees, and therefore that is an obtuse angle. If the measure of angle C is exactly 180 degrees, that is a straight angle. And if the measure of angle D is 55 degrees, that is less than 90 and therefore an acute angle. One of the things you'll have to do on your Canvas quiz today is just classify some angles. Is it acute, obtuse, right, or straight? Okay, if you have any questions, of course, ask about that. Now, here is the part that is a little new and a little tricky, but I think if we trace and draw some things, we'll realize it's not actually that bad. It's all about just understanding how we read geometry. And if you can do this, then a lot of the questions I'm going to ask you will feel way easier because you understand what you're looking at. It says right here, in each diagram below, trace the specified angle with a colored pencil. And that was referring back to the days where there used to be this really happy time in my class where I had little buckets of supplies that everyone shared. Thanks to COVID, I don't have that in my classroom anymore, but hopefully you have some fun, fancy pens or something that you can do. So if this says, I'm going to read this out loud. Here's how it's written. You're looking at it. I'm going to read this out loud. It is angle SRT. Follow the order of the letters. Which letter comes first? S. So here I am at point S. I'm going to follow it to the next letter. I'm tracing. Here I go. S, R. Do I go to Q? No, I go to T. S, R, T. Do you see how the order of those three letters helps me see that I am dealing with this angle right there? The two rays open up to create the angle that is measured in degrees. We have a whole different way of measuring it because it's not the same as length or width or anything. It's a whole different thing. It's an arc, it's an angle. But you can see how on this one, I would not have been able to do what I did up here and just name it angle A. You can't just name this off the vertex. I can't say angle R because there are actually three different angles in there. Let's look at the rest of them. So I have to name this with three letters, so it's very, very clear that I mean this acute angle right here, angle SRT. What if they name it angle QRS? Follow the letters. Q to R to S. There's another angle that's in that picture, and they had to name it with three different letters so we could see exactly the difference. This is angle SRT, and this is angle QRS. Or look what they can say here, angle TRQ from T to R. Okay, T to R to Q. Oh, that's actually this whole thing all the way across, both those angles put together. So what's really important here is understanding simply that the three letters lead you to a certain angle. And you just have to know how to read that. especially when, I mean, look at these complicated pictures. Lots of angles in these pictures, right? So let's follow the letters and see which angle they want me to focus on. This picture wants me to focus on angle AED. Follow the letters. A, E, well, that's not a very good straight line, Miss McGowan. A to E, and then where do I go? D. I like to draw the arrows on the end when I get to the end of my picture. It helps me just see the angle better, see where the rays are, even if they're technically line segments in the picture. And then I can see that particular name is talking about this angle here, AED. Okay, same picture, different letters. Let's see where this one is. A, wait, where am I supposed to go now? Am I supposed to go to E? No, A, B, E, angle ABE. A to B to E. Oh, that's interesting. Maybe you wouldn't have even thought of that angle. But look, if I put the arrows on the end and say, those are my rays, I'm talking about that angle right there. A, B to E. And one more. Again, there's a lot more angles in this picture than what I'm making you draw, but I just want you to understand the importance of knowing how to name the angle and find it in the picture. Okay, where is CED? C to E over here to D. I would call this an obtuse angle from C to E to D. I'm talking about that angle right there. Lots of angles in this picture, so it's really important that we know how to read the geometry and understand which one are they even talking about. Now, this next part, again, this is something we would have done in class when we had protractors in our buckets. I am going to just show you what a protractor is and how to measure it. It's possible that some of you have one, and if you do, you can pause and go get it. All right, this is called a protractor, and I'm just going to show you real quick just to make sure you understand as we start talking about measures. We're going to use a protractor a little bit, and you'll just kind of watch me do it on the first couple, but we use it to discover important patterns so that we actually don't have to use protractors moving forward. The idea of a protractor is it has a couple of measurements that take you from 0 to 180. And we have two different measurements because your angle could either open this direction or it could open this direction. So this little t right here gets placed on the vertex, and then you make sure you are lining up this line right here with this horizontal ray. And then you simply read. The nice thing about a protractor, like I said, it's not like something you can measure with a ruler. You need degrees. And so the protractor shows me that this angle opens 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, about 82 degrees. It actually shows me how far this opens. And we get a new measurement called degrees. And we use that little symbol or the word degrees. This symbol means degrees. And you've heard that when talking like temperature, we use it for that too, but it's a slightly different meaning here. And that means that this angle is acute, which we probably would have guessed from looking at. To measure this one, you can tell it is obtuse because it goes past the square. And again, it opens up all the way out to 110 degrees. That verifies for me that this is definitely obtuse. It opens more than 90 degrees. Now, the reason you have this other set of numbers on the protractor is because sometimes the angles open this direction. Now, if you make the mistake of reading this one, you should know right away that does not make sense. 130 degrees, no way. It's 50 degrees because I should be going from 0 out to 50 degrees. You don't have to don't worry too much about using a protractor because you don't have to actually physically measure anything, but you do have to understand what an angle is measured in. And so I just wanted you to see a protractor real quick and understand that this is how we're measuring an angle. It's all about the degrees. So to measure these, this is going to help lead us into some special type of angles, okay? And I'm going to use this also to help us reinforce how we can name angles and write these things. So I'm going to make a list over here. I'm actually going to measure for you and help you find the measure of angle. We're going to find these angles, angle A, E, D. Can you see that in the picture? Follow the letters, A, E, D. We're also going to do DEB, follow the letters and find that in the picture. We're also going to do BEC, and we're also going to do AEC. That's what they mean by non-overlapping angles, because I have some that cross over each other. But do you see how there are really 1, 2, 3, 4 main angles? If you take 2 lines and cross them, that's what you're going to get every time is 4 main angles. Now, when I measure these with a protractor, I'm going to hopefully notice a couple of things. So when I measure this one, I see about 45 degrees. That was angle BED or DEB. This one was 45 degrees. And this one, I measure on the other side, which brings me to, that's AED, 135 degrees. And if I just flip it over and measure all of those again, I get the same measurements on the other side. So BEC is 135 degrees and AEC is 45 degrees. Again, just making sure you understand that angles get measured in a different way, and this is going to help lead us to some very special relationships tomorrow. These angles I can just name as angle 1, angle 2, angle 3, and angle 4 because they labeled them nicely that way for me, which is sometimes really nice and a little easier to see. So angle 1, I'm going to measure like this, and I need these outside ones. So angle 1 looks like it's about, we'll call it 70 degrees. And angle 4 was 110. I can read that from the same thing. I'm going to tell you this right now. Angle 3 would be 110 and angle 2 would be 70. Those type of angles are the first special relationship that we're going to start investigating tomorrow. Okay, so we'll learn vocabulary for that. Today for your Canvas quiz, you're going to practice naming and classifying some angles and just working on some angle basics to help us get ready for that.